Jim.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, June 14th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful Tuesday? We've got current news from around the world, looking into the book of Colossians, and a new segment on the question of the week. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? It is a wonderful Tuesday. Monday is already over, so the hardest day is done. We are smack into this week, and we've got to get it done with this week's message. I hope that all of us are giving thanksgiving, love, and glory to the Holy Trinity. How has your week been so far? Really thankful for you guys joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. So keep liking, commenting, and I want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. So let's build the English-speaking community over here in Providence. Now, here's the thing. I did say there's a new section today, and that last section, usually it's a thoughts of the week, but we're going to do question of the week. So we're starting it this week. I'm going to bring up a new topic that you guys can all comment on. And then with all these comments, we'll kind of, talk about it the week after what everyone's comments were on a specific situation that we're talking about for this week. So we're going to try this out. I'm going to start off with a question. At the very last segment, we'll have a question that we open up with different situations and circumstances. And I want to know what you guys think about that topic. And then I'm going to collect your comments for an entire week. And then after that, the next Tuesday, we're going to go over to see, look at everyone's answers and kind of find a middle ground, or what did Sunseam say about this? Or, what can we do in our own regions or our own cultures that might be a little bit different how we do it, all right? So that's going to start from today. So that's the last segment of the day is going to be the question, and I guess we'll say question and comments, because we're going to comment all week on this one thing, okay? So, for me, I had a really rough night yesterday. I couldn't sleep, and I didn't sleep. And, it's so weird. You guys ever have insomnia where you're not sleepy at all, and then, you're bored because you're just lying in the dark. And then, it's so weird for me because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't go to sleep, closing my eyes, open. I don't know if I didn't even have coffee that late yesterday either. But, you just start opening up your cacao, I start chatting with people around the world, I'm just trying to kill time because I'm not sleepy at all. Have you guys ever had that before? Comment below if you have that insomnia where you're so awake, it's like 1 a.m. and you're like, what, 2 a.m. and you're like, what the, 3 a.m. You're like, why am I not falling asleep? And then you make things worse by looking at media and, you're just checking social media and stuff like this just because you're awake, right? And obviously checking the social media makes it even worse because you're not going to go back to sleep, right? So yeah, for me, I was up all night. I honestly didn't even get to bed until around 4 a.m. That's how bad my insomnia was. And then, it's pretty crazy. So, I don't know. For me, I was so tired this morning. I didn't even go to exercise. It was just, I don't know. I had coffee yesterday, but I had it I still didn't have it that late. I think I drank it around 3 p.m. So it couldn't have been the coffee. It was at 3 p.m. And it probably, it runs through my system probably within 3 to 4 hours. But I was just like, wow, why was I not sleepy at all? But I was tired during the day, and I wasn't sleepy. I didn't fall asleep. I didn't do anything during the day, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the Holy Spirit telling me go pray. You know what? I should have done that. I should have prayed instead. I'm just kind of in bed what am I doing? So yeah, it's kind of a messed up day for me in my mind because just tired. Okay, I don't know if you guys have been through that or not, but it's Tuesday. I got to reset my clock and make sure I get to bed really early. I just had my cup of coffee, and it's early it's the morning time, so not a big deal. I don't think this is gonna affect me. Maybe it's because of the new tea I tried last night. But I had rooibos tea last night, which means it's non-caffeinated from what I know. I don't know. Tell me, guys. Hey, you know what? I would like a comment on what do you guys do to help you to fall asleep? Right? I know the funniest comment I've ever heard was if I really want to fall asleep, I start reading the Bible. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, thank you for that, because then you'll fall asleep. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing that you fall asleep every time you read the Bible. So I'm just like, I don't know if I can. Well, I just said it, but you know, I don't know. It's how about you guys? Do you guys, have you guys ever? Either way, let's move on before God gets upset at me. All right, so we've got a new talk on Thursday night. I'm going to be filming that today. It's why God doesn't answer your prayers, right? So it can be 3 reasons why God doesn't answer your prayers. It can be a great video for your newcomers and such too, so go ahead and check that out. And yes, I am working to get Sunday edition going, so I will get something for this week. So I hope that, you know, I'll get all the editing and stuff done by this week also. All right, so let's get this show started. Let's get this started on this awesome Tuesday. Woohoo! I don't know why I sang, but I just did. All right, so we're going to start off with some music from member artists from around the world. And today's featured artist is going to be AG from Japan, a relatively new artist that we just discovered maybe 2 months ago. He's got all this good dance, trap, you know, like EDM, SID music. And today we're going to listen to the song Love is Eternal. I believe this is the EDM or the SID version, right? So I hope you guys really enjoy this stuff. It's cool that we have like Providence music in this style of music too. There are so many different styles of music and ways to express, and I'm glad that people are using their skills and their talents to do this with like Providence music also, because, you know, when I listen to trance, you know, I don't listen to it much, but there's house, you know, trance, dance, you know, EDM, all this type of music. It's kind of all similar, right? And when you think about it, if people are listening to it anyways, you might as well listen to the Providence style music, right? Because it's very, very similar the way it sounds. So we're going to listen to Love is Eternal, and that's a feature also that's AG from Japan. Then we have the Sumney Boys from America with Rise Up. That's their latest single. And we'll end things off with J Root from the Paper Music Associates in Korea with the song World of Us.
Yeah, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word and action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying. Everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan. I gotta be new, gotta be great, I only gotta win this thing. Fixing mistakes, fix who I am, all I wanna do is change. Gotta be brave, gotta be tough, no more time for delaying. It's just training, all those times of pain. Off, pushing my limits, only with God. I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to feel God. Enemies watching, they want you to fall, but you have to be better, you have to give it your all. Every day I make myself, but I know it's not easy. This is the life I chose and I know my spirit's breathing. The battle has only begun and I may take damage, but if I fall, all I know how to do one thing. Rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying. Everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan. I'm Goku turning Super Saiyan, I'm charged up, now I'm playing. On the mount like Sinai, I connect with God like Wi-Fi. Receive the word, always praying, spiritual path where I'm staying. Everyone thinks I lost, but I'm always with him, so you know I'm prevailing. Protecting myself from Satan, armed with the truth, now my angels will shoot like. Now I'm at my truest form, I'm trying to really be the greatest. The power level can't contain it, my energy is never draining. Look how far we have made it, unlocking levels never hesitated. There's no try, you either just do it or don't, so fix your thoughts instead. Everybody makes mistakes, just gotta take notes, can afford to do it again. Life is so easy, if you just do what is right and just follow what's real. Victory comes through skill, gotta stay on course, time to kill. Time to rise and shine, thinking of the past and then forget. God is Lord, by your side, holding your hand, dry your eyes, trust in Lord every night and day. He'll never let you go, don't fall away. Be bold, be brave, and with all your heart, love the Lord to the end of time. Rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, held to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying. Everyone thinks I lost, but I'm turning Super Saiyan.
And that is J Root from PMA in Korea with World of Us, and that's featuring Seungyeong. Before that was the Sunny Boys from America with Rise Up. That is their latest single. And of course, feature artist of the day, that is AG from Japan with Love is Eternal. All right, everyone, so let's get into today's world news. What is happening around the world? And of course, what are the 3 reasons why we're learning about the world news every day through the news? As Sunsim said, number 1 is you can see what God is doing. Number 2, you can look at the things you need to report and pray for. And last but not least, what are the things that we can comfort God's heart in with some of this terrible news that is happening, right? So once again, we're going to start off with the Russia-Ukraine war. We've passed the 3-month mark. It's pretty, it's crazy what is going on right now. There's an actual war that is that's, what do you call it? It's layered underneath the pandemic with a bunch of other things that are happening at the same time. I really want to talk about this before, but it really feels like this is a big judgment time for the world, right? Like if you think about it, it's one thing after another. Like that pandemic is the whole world that was affected, right? The whole world was affected by this. Tons of corruption is seen all through the leadership. You have tons of leaders that are changing during this time. On top of it, you have a war in Russia and Ukraine, which is also affecting the food crisis in the world. And on top of that, we have a recession, inflation. It is almost full out. This is when I look at this, there's no other way that this is not judgment. There's no way God would let, if everything was done in a righteous way, if people were really that good, there's no way the whole world would be affected like this. Something at this level is something that we have to understand. It's not just it's not like, oh my gosh, it's just all a coincidence. This is all happening, and we can see that God has kind of taken his hands off, where there's a lot of judgment going on at the same time. And it's, we may have forgotten this, but, there's a thing that we're praying for in Sunsim's situation right now. And it almost feels like this is not, I don't know if this is true or not, but just the feeling is after all that Sunsim has been through, and then we're going through this again, right? With the slander and this type of stuff. And it's just you almost feel like this is the condition of the world, and you got to go through this. On top of all this stuff, Sunsim's going through that, so I do not think it's a coincidence. And on top of it, we have North Korea and South Korea getting to more tense situations with the missile launches, and then you have Taiwan and Hong Kong. All these things are happening at the same time. So I do think it's something we really should be praying about. And learning it through the world news helps us to get a broader view. This is the world situation. It's not just pandemic and the Ukraine and Russia war. There's food crisis. There's so many things going on. North Korea, South Korea, China, Taiwan, China and Hong Kong. You have political turmoil in the U.S. and in Canada, and then recession, inflation. We're basically hitting a major depression. Gas prices are hiked up, and it's just crazy right now. So I do think we have to think about this very, very carefully, and our prayers kind of need to shift a bit. God, what is happening right now? So I hope it's something that can just kind of embolden our thoughts to really listen to this world news. Let's start off with what's happened in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Of course, there's a big war and battle going on in Severodonetsk, and all bridges to Severodonetsk have been destroyed, and this is news from the regional governor. All 3 bridges to the embattled city of Severodonetsk have been destroyed, says regional governor Serhiy Haidai. In an update, he says, although Russian troops have not completely captured the city, which is at the center of the fighting between Russia and Ukrainian troops, all bridges leading to the regional center have now been destroyed, making the evacuation of residents and the transportation of goods impossible. Residents who remain in the city are surviving under extremely difficult conditions, with the city under heavy fire. Also, UK MPs are urging to set up a humanitarian zone to enable grain exports. A UN-approved humanitarian zone should be set up around the port of Odessa, a British MP says, to ensure exports of grain can get out of Ukraine, which is one of the world's main food producers. Tobias Elwood, who chairs the Commons Defense Committee, says with Russia consolidating in the Donbass, there's every chance they may be turning their sights to Odessa. Now, if this port falls, Ukraine will be landlocked, further impacting on the cost of living crisis across Europe, including here, which is the UK, because critical grain exports can't get out. So if you know about Ukraine, what are they a major supply of? If you look at the percentage of global exports, right, and this is in 2019, like before the pandemic, Ukraine exports 42% of the world's sunflower oil, 16% of the world's maize, 10% of barley, and 9% of world grain. So this is a major contributor in the world, that just even wheat itself is like 10% of the world's exports are gone just in grain itself. But sunflower oil is 42%. Also, when we look at what's happening in Russia, Russia still has energy exports. That's the main commodity that they're trading with. Since the war began, so it's been like over 3 months, Russia has earned about $100 billion on energy exports since the invasion. Russia earned nearly $100 billion from oil and gas exports during the first 100 days of the war in Ukraine, according to a report. Revenues have been falling since March as many countries shunned Russian supplies, but remain high, the Independent Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air found. It also warned of potential loopholes in efforts to curb imports from Russia. The EU, US, and UK are among those to have pledged to cut Russian imports. But the CREA report found Russia still earned $97 billion in revenue from fossil fuel exports in the first 100 days of the Ukraine conflict, from February 24th to June 3rd. The European Union made up 61% of these imports, worth approximately $59 billion, and overall exports of Russian oil and gas are falling, and Moscow's revenue from energy sales have also declined from a peak of well over $1 billion a day in March. But revenue still exceeded the cost of the Ukraine war during the first 100 days, estimating that Russia is spending around $876 million per day on the invasion. So we'll see what happens. But, if they're making $1 billion a day, they're still, making profits from their energy. But, if people are starting to get rid of Russian imports, then that is going to be a major blow to the Russian efforts. All right, so that's kind of the reports going on for the Ukraine-Russian crisis. Let's move over to France, and we just had an election with Emmanuel Macron coming out victorious. However, now the left is surging and is threatening Macron's majority in France. So French President Macron is at risk of losing his outright majority after a strong challenge from a coalition of left-wing parties in National Assembly elections. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, left-green alliance, finished neck and neck with Mr. Macron's Ensemble, or Together, in terms of votes cast in Sunday's first round. The president faces a battle in next week's second round to win 289 seats and keep his majority. Turnout was historically low at only 47.5%, and within half an hour of the first projection, a somber Jean-Luc Mélenchon announced his alliance was in the lead. The truth at the end of the first round is that the presidential party is beaten and defeated, and this is what Mélenchon said, and he called on voters to turn out in force next Sunday to reject definitely the disastrous policies of Mr. Macron's majority. Centrist Emmanuel Macron won a second term in April, but without a majority in the assembly, he will struggle to push through reforms. He intends to raise gradually the retirement age from 62 to 65, while Mélenchon vows to lower it to 60. Now, although Ensemble won 25.75% of the vote, marginally ahead of the left's 25.66%, it was still projected to dominate the National Assembly, and basically, they said that they gave Ensemble about 275 to 305 seats. So that's a big push, with the Green Left Alliance on 175 to 205. Ipsos for France Television said Mr. Macron's alliance was heading for a lower 255 to 295 seats, and the left to 150 to 190. So turnout was the lowest in modern French history. Many voters clearly decided to take advantage of the sunny weather across France, with temperatures in Paris hitting 27 degrees Celsius. But so far, the election campaign has largely failed to spark into life. Now, Mr. Mélenchon has proved the exception, leading a vigorous campaign since he came a close third in the presidential election, and he has built an alliance called, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's like Nupe, made up of his own far-left party, France Unbowed, the Socialists, Communists, and Greens, with the slogan Mélenchon Prime Minister. And his aim has been to stop the president winning the majority he needs across France's 577 constituencies. On top of lowering the retirement age, Nupe vows to freeze prices on 100 essentials and create 1 million jobs. Meanwhile, Macron has spent the intervening weeks since he won a second term in building a new government under Elizabeth Borne, as France grapples with rising inflation and a cost of living crunch. The Prime Minister said the government had 1 week to convince voters and win a majority, pointing to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And she said, we cannot risk instability, and France's values were at risk. And she said that we alone have a project of coherence and responsibility. Over to China. China is warning Taiwan that if there is anyone helping independence of Taiwan, it would trigger a war. So China has warned the U.S. that any attempt to make Taiwan independent from China will trigger military action by Beijing's forces. Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fenghe met his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin on the sidelines of an Asian Security Summit in Singapore. Splitting Taiwan from China would leave the Chinese military with no choice but to fight at any cost, Mr. Wei said. Mr. Austin later called Chinese military activity provocative and destabilizing, and he said there were record numbers of Chinese aircraft flying near the island on a nearly daily basis, which undermined peace and stability in the region. China views self-ruled Taiwan as an integral part of China's territory, a stance that prompted Mr. Wei to condemn U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. A spokesman quoted him as saying, if anyone dares to split Taiwan from China, the Chinese People Liberation Army, the PLA, will have no choice but fight at any cost and crush any attempt of Taiwan independence and safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Mr. Austin said the U.S. was committed to maintaining the status quo, recognizing Beijing as the sole government of China and opposing Taiwanese independence, and he insisted there must be no attempt to resolve tensions through force. And it was the first meeting of the U.S. and Chinese defense chiefs and lasted nearly an hour at the Shangri-La Dialogue Security Summit. Now, Mr. Wei said the talks went smoothly and both sides described them as cordial. Mr. Austin spoke of the importance of maintaining fully open lines of communications with China's military to avoid any misunderstanding. And in late May, Taiwan said it had deployed fighter jets to warn off 30 warplanes sent by China into its air defense zone. The incident marked the biggest Chinese incursion since January. The incident involved 22 Taiwanese fighters, as well as electronic warfare, early warning, and anti-submarine aircraft, Taiwan's defense ministry said. So, on top of everything, it's just getting crazy what's happening in the world, and I would not be surprised if another war started. I'm just not. With the situation that's going on right now, all the chaos, I would not be surprised if something else actually happened again. Yeah, I don't know. Could you be surprised, guys? Honestly, could you really be surprised by that with what is going on around the world? And the answer is no way. Like, it is crazy what is happening. It really is, right? So I hope that all of us can really spend this time in deep prayer of what is happening around the world. Okay? All right. So let's move into some sporting news. In some sporting news, we have there's a lot of, it's the finals for both the NHL and the NBA. NBA's Game 5 is tonight, and the NHL starts the Stanley Cup playoffs on Wednesday. So we're going to report on some other sports that we may not have heard about that much, but it's good to know the other sports too. In golf, of course, we report some of this. The Canadian Open, yes, it's in Canada. It's Rory McIlroy shoots an 8 under during the last round to successfully defend his title. The last title was in 2019, but of course, of the pandemic, we missed 2 years of the Canadian Open, and this is his 21st tour victory of his career, tying him for 31st all-time for tour wins. But interestingly, there's that big showdown between the LIV Tour, the Saudi-funded tour, and the PGA. And Jay Monahan, which is a PGA Tour commissioner, basically shots fired. He said the Saudi-funded league looks at it only as a series of exhibition matches that spends billions of dollars on players without getting a return on investment. And he also said that players who signed with this league would have to hide under a rock for the criticism they'll receive from receiving Saudi-funded money. And these were his final public comments before the Canadian Open began. So yes, it's pretty bad. Not only are they banning players, basically they're doubling down on how bad this is, right? In second news, we have F1 racing. F1 is like one of the most popular sports in the world too, and you know who does, like, especially with male fans, who doesn't like cars and these fast, powerful cars? They just had the Azerbaijan GP, and Red Bull teams Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez drove to their third 1-2 finish of the season. Both Ferrari drivers had to retire. The Red Bull team is so far ahead of the pack. Verstappen with 125 points, Perez with 99 points, and then in third, they're 44 points away, which means they're 2 victories away from it, so we'll see what happens there. And they also have an 80-point lead in the constructor standings. Now, constructor, there's like when you look at F1, there's 2 different championships going on at the same time. One is the Drivers' Championship, so it's the person who collects the most points wins the season. And of course, they have the constructor standings. And just simply put, Constructors' Championship is for the entities responsible for designing, building the engine and chassis of the Formula One car, and the entity that designs, creates, and builds a chassis. All of them are entered in the Constructors' Championship, and the constructors in Formula One are responsible for the research, development, and construction of the F1 car, right? So these entities are known as constructors, as this is in keeping with the spirit of Formula One, where teams are required to construct their own race car. So it's kind of cool, right? So what happens is, since there's 2 championships, there's a ton of money going into this, right? So what happens for constructors every year, because of revenue sharing, each team last year got 42 million off the top. Every team gets 42 million, right? And if you win the constructors, which is the combined points of each of your 2 drivers that you have, what happens is last year's prize was $73.5 million, right? So, you know, that's just for the constructors. And that's like right there, you're getting over $100 million if you win the constructors. And just for the constructors themselves, and that's not including the Drivers' Championship. But just to let you know how much money drivers can win their companies or their teams. Last year, I believe Ferrari, their revenue last year just from F1 was over $500 million for the entire team. So it is a very, very lucrative sport. A lot of revenues from sales, tickets, and merchandise, and also TV broadcasting, which is the biggest one, right? So that is, you know, that's kind of cool to know about F1 racing there. Let's go into soccer. All the main leagues around the world, except for like Major League Soccer in America, they're all finished, and now only national teams are playing. And there's a Nations League going on right now all over Europe. A couple of games that we've missed out. Spain beats the Czech Republic 2-0. Sorry, I guess speaking the soccer lingo. Switzerland defeats Portugal 1-0. Norway beats Sweden 3-2. England and Italy 2, a draw, stalemate of 0-0. Germany and Hungary tie at 1-1. Netherlands and Poland also tie at 2-2. Belgium and Wales tied at 1-1, and France and Austria are also tied at 1-1. So that's just kind of what the news are going on. A lot of the sports are dying down because all the major sports are at the very, very end with the finals. And then, of course, NFL starts again, I believe, in like 3 months or 2 months, right? They'll start again. So that's when things get kind of crazy in America once again. All right. So there's your news in sports and current news from around the world, which means it is golden time. Yes, it's the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. A lot of good songs today, a lot of newer songs coming out too. We're going to start off with The Lord Has Come Back to Life. That's a recent song that just came out for the IETT. And then The Masterpiece of a Lifetime also just came out. And then Pray at All Times. All right. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
The dark grave, our Lord came to life. He won against Satan. He defeated the wicked. He has conquered death and darkness forever. He has come to life. As for you, brides of this time, you have come back to life again. history of joy eternally. We will live in heaven's city of gold, and with the Lord here we will live as his bride. We will serve the Lord our God. We will live with the Spirit, being inspired. We will act. It's time to resurrect. It's a new history. We've resurrected, triumphant, glorious. We have gained victory. We have gained victory.
Now we are almost done. Take courage and be strong. If you only sit there drained without any strength, tell me what then can I do? I've come this far looking at you. What can I do? Is there any way I can take your hand? God the Almighty Savior is coming near. He's on his way to converse with you. Will you remain just sitting down? Come on, time to go now. Lift your eyes, see heaven is waiting. The clouds stand still. They wait for you to realize they're sitting still to help you see and realize. That's it, you are starting to see. On days like this when we are together, seeing you lead me by the hand is beautiful. My beloved one, seeing you gives me strength. You're awesome, and that is why I have chosen you. You're just that great, and you have come so far now. You're the masterpiece of my life, the masterpiece of a lifetime. Your heart does not change. You are firm, unwavering. Even as storms rage on, even as winds blow strong, even as the seasons come and go, even if rainstorms and blizzards may come your way, you've never once changed. Your love stays strong. That beauty never fades, and the fragrance of your life fills the air. On the breeze, giving off your sweet scent. How fragrant are these lovely days of spring. Beautiful are the days of These are warm, just like myself. Warm and cozy, so bright, so full of hope.
Pray at all times. We must pray. Pray at all times. Pray at all times. We must pray. Pray at all times. In our lives at times we feel anxiety. Everyone goes through hardships. Everyone has worries. They rise and fall just like crashing waves. God has said, this is the solution. You must all pray. Pray without ending. If you want to talk, come and talk to me. That's what God said. Pray at all times. We must pray. Pray at all times. God has said we should tell him what's in our hearts. How tremendous, that's so great. You and I both, we should say exactly what we must once the time is gone. Just like the sun sets over western hills, pitch darkness will come upon you quickly. Therefore, that pray at all times. We must pray. Pray at all times. Pray at all times. We must pray. Pray at all times. We must all pray. We must all pray.
And there it is, the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Really, really good songs that just resonate for the time we're living in right now. That last song was Pray at All Times. Before that, Masterpiece of a Lifetime, and of course, The Lord Has Come Back to Life. All right, so let's get ourselves into the word study for today. And of course, every single Tuesday, we do go into the Bible verses or scriptures for the week, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into the books. We did get some new books this week, so I'm really, really happy that we're going to go into the book of Colossians. I don't think we've ever actually gone into this one before, so let's get into it. Word study today is going to be on the book of Colossians in the New Testament. Okay, so let's start off with the author. The author of Colossians is blatantly stated to be Paul. That's in chapter 1, verse 1. Timothy likely served as the scribe while Paul dictated the content, with exception to the final verse of the letter, which Paul wrote with his own hand. Many scholars have tried to argue that Paul did not author this letter, rather someone who called himself Paul wrote the letter much later, and their argument is based primarily upon the writing style of the letter and Paul's Christology. Now, first, the writing style of Colossians is quite different from many of Paul's other letters. However, to make the claim that a man is as intelligent as Paul could not have variations in his writing style is kind of like a ridiculous statement, right? So, in fact, the stylistic differences are actually justified. The church in Colossae was predominantly a Gentile community, and Paul had never met them. Most of Paul's other letters were written to mainly Jewish gatherings and people that he knew personally. Thus, it would make sense that Paul would write to the Colossians in a different manner. Second thing is, some argue that Paul's Christology is too advanced for this to be a genuine letter from Paul, but this argument is based upon the belief that the first generation apostles did not believe that Jesus was fully God and fully man. Instead, our present day Christology evolved over time. We, of course, reject that notion, finding there's just so much of the biblical evidence that supports the Christological beliefs. It's something that we have, these are just arguments that are happening in Christianity right now. So that's why we can reasonably conclude that the letters to the Colossians was not written by another man using the name of Paul, nor did Paul's Christology become grander by the time of his writing of Colossians. Instead, Paul sought to express the majestic mystery of Christ because the glory of Christ was under attack by heretics. Now, the theme in this very relatively short book is that all things visible and invisible were made through and for Christ, and he is the sustainer of all creation. And of course, by his blood, Christ is reconciling all things with the Father, ushering in the new creation and transforming our lives. Now, if you want to look at the background of this book, let's take a look at the city of Colossae. Okay, so the city of Colossae was located in the Lycus Valley of present-day Turkey. Now, within the valley of the Lycus River existed three important cities of Asia Minor. And you might have heard these ones in the Bible and also in history books. Hierapolis, Laodicea, and Colossae. Those are the three important cities, okay? Now, together, these cities were known for their production of highly valuable fabric. And, these were very, very rich cities. That Laodicea did not use Roman aid when recovering from a devastating earthquake. That's how rich they were, right? The riches of Laodicea continued at least into the 1st century because John records Jesus' message to the church of that city as such. He basically says, this is in Revelations, "For you say, I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing, not realizing that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked." And that's in Revelation chapter 3 when Apostle John talks about Laodicea, right? However, while Laodicea continued to prosper, Colossae did not. Right? Colossae was like the least important church to which any epistle of St. Paul was addressed. Indeed, by the time of the New Testament, Colossae was little more than a small town that used to have a degree of prominence. However, size is not a precursor for being used by God. So though Paul did not plant the church in Colossae, he had a deep love for them. And the size or importance of the city made no difference to the apostle. And when he heard of the battle for truth that confronted the Colossians, he wrote one of the most stunning and magnificent descriptions of Christ within the entire New Testament. And, a lot of people are quick to give effort and energy only to areas that seem best suited for them. However, Paul freely gave his wisdom and prayers to a small town church, even while he was also giving it to cities like Rome, Ephesus, and Corinth. And also because of many phrases that Paul uses throughout Colossians, we can conclude that he was writing to a primarily Gentile church. So, a few signs throughout the letter also suggest that Paul did not plant this church. Like if you look in chapter 1, verse 9, Paul states that from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you. And this, of course, implies that Paul only heard of their beginning as a church. And in chapter 1, verse 4, it says the same thing. Secondly, Paul claims in chapter 2, verse 1, that he struggles for the believers in Colossae, Laodicea, and all those who have not seen his face. So it seems that Colossae and Laodicea are among those who have not seen him face to face. And third, Paul states that they learned from Epaphras in chapter 1, verse 7, and perhaps it was Epaphras who planted the church in Colossae. So that's kind of the reason why we're looking at, we have a few signs that Paul was not, he never went there, he never planted that church. Now, what is the primary purpose of this letter that Paul wrote to the Colossians? Now, Paul wrote to the Colossians primarily to combat heresy. Okay, so he wrote to the Colossians to combat heresy. Like a false teaching was rampant among the church in Colossae, and it was devaluing Jesus Christ. And thus Paul wrote to correctly display the glory of Christ, the gospel of Christ, and the impact of Christ in the life of believers. So Colossians can easily be divided into two parts, chapter 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. The first two chapters address the theological arguments for the supremacy of Christ, while the final chapters detail the impact and applications that Christ's supremacy should have in our daily lives. So because of this structure, many have noticed striking similarities between Colossians and Ephesians, right? Because Ephesians 2 can be divided in half like Colossians. Though Colossians and Ephesians are quite similar, they complement one another rather than serving as replacements. Colossians and Ephesians are two sides of the same coin, and both are needed to complete the theology found within them. So if, it's only 4 chapters for Colossians, so if you're going to read that, it's also good to read Ephesians. I think Ephesians only has like 6 chapters in it anyways, but if you read 2, they complement each other really well. So what is the Colossian heresy? So that's the thing, what was going on there. So the details we have of the heresy within Colossae are found in the letter of Colossians, and even then all of our descriptions come from Paul's opposing arguments. Nevertheless, from the points that Paul makes, we can conclude some basics of the Colossian heresy. What was heresy going on there? So, number 1, basically the devaluing of Christ. And this is the most devastating attack of the heresy upon Christian doctrine, and the entire basis of the Christian faith is in Christ. And if we devalue the worth and work of Christ, then we have undercut the whole potency of Christianity. So from the emphasis that Paul places upon the deity of Christ, we can conclude that primarily that they did not view Jesus as being God. Right? However, the opposite false teaching is equally as dangerous, believing that Christ was not fully human, right? So it's quite, this is where we have that big thing where the Holy Son lesson is so big for all of us here in Providence, because that's the big conundrum. They're like, oh, did they say that Christ was not God? But then we have a problem when you say that Christ is not fully human either, right? So that's why the Holy Son lesson is so huge for us. Paul in Colossians strongly emphasizes both the deity and humanity of Christ, right? If you look at Colossians chapter 2, verse 9, it says, "For in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily." The second hint we have, or the second thing we can that we can take away from the second thing we could take away from the book of Colossians, what the Colossian heresy is the heresy was probably highly influenced by Jewish mysticism, right? So practitioners of Jewish mysticism strongly emphasize religious observances and regulations, as well as unhealthy interest in spiritual matters. So Jewish mystics were prone to worshiping angels and exalting visions, which chapter 2, verse 18 warns about, and they also were strict ascetics, right? Likely emphasizing circumcision as necessary for salvation and the importance of observing certain festivals and dietary restrictions and stuff like that too. And you can find that in chapter 2 also. And the problem with these is, of course, not only Jesus, the thing that makes this very difficult is it's only Jesus that's necessary for salvation, not these other things like circumcision and what you eat. Right? And that's a very important fact that Paul's bringing up in the book of Colossians. Now, the third hint we have is false teachers swayed by Hellenistic philosophies, the philosophies of so the Hellenistic is the Greek philosophies, right? So these false teachers are very, very influenced by Hellenistic or Greek philosophies. So the philosophies of the Greco-Roman world are legendary even today. Like we all know them today still. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle are still regarded as some of the greatest thinkers of all time. However, much of their philosophies are contrary to Christian doctrine. And though we can't be certain of exactly what philosophy was being taught, most propose that it was a form of Gnosticism. Right? And what's Gnosticism? Gnostics were known for primarily 2 teachings. The first one, they sought to learn a secret knowledge that would allow them to reach God. And secondly, they saw all material things as evil and all spiritual things as good. And that's why they concluded that God did not directly create the world, because a good spiritual God could not create an evil material world. And the goal of Gnosticism at that time was to reach God in spirituality through the secret knowledge, right? So the view of material as evil and spiritual as good leads to a unique set of circumstances, and Gnostics were very prone to both legalism and you guys got to listen to this word. It's very, very a difficult word. It's antinomianism. Okay. Antinomianism. So anyone wants to know what that is, right? Basically, in Greek, it means against law. So it's a doctrine according to which Christians are freed by grace from the necessity of obeying the Mosaic law, right? So it's kind of that people like the Jewish mystics that are saying that you have to get circumcised and stuff like that too. Okay, so the Gnostics were prone to both legalism and antinomianism. Now, in some places they were highly restrictive, but in others they were utterly careless about what they did with their bodies. And Paul combats this notion by explaining that the entire world was created through and for Christ, and therefore he created the material world good. Okay, so that's kind of like the idea of the book of Colossians. It is a very, very short book, but it's good to know the author, the people who are saying that it might not be Paul, might not be. They're not saying that it's not, right? The theme in here, of course, it's that all things visible, invisible were made through and for Christ, right? And by his blood, all are reconciled, right? Not by like circumcision and following the Jewish legalistic laws and stuff. And we get a good idea of the background of Colossae. Used to be very rich, but then turned very, very small into a small town. But Paul was even in his love was able to reach out to that town too, just like he did for the larger places like Rome and Ephesus also, right? So it's very interesting to learn about this, and I hope that you guys will have a good read when it comes to the book of Colossians. Everyone, it's only 4 chapters. Go ahead and take a look at it, and I hope that it'll be something that we can all gain from together too. All right, so that is the word study for today on the book of Colossians. Hope you guys really, really enjoyed that more than anything else. And that leads us into the song of choice for today. It is Korean Tuesday. Mondays are Filipino. Tuesdays are Korean. And I'm going back to old music from the 90s, I believe. Late 90s to the early 2000s. And this is DJ Doc. I'm not sure if you guys know them. Guys, one thing when I look at the old K-pop songs, it's very cute. It almost sounds like Japanese music, but it's super cute music. And it's not really like, it's like made to just, it's cute and trying to make people feel good. This one's called Summer Story, and it's the Sky Mix. That's why I chose this one. But this is a song that gives me a lot of nostalgia because we listened to this a lot when I was in Korea for the first time, and I went to Warmingdong for the first time too. And that was right after. No, that was the first time I was in Korea, and that was right during the World Cup in 2002. That I was listening to this song. So it brings a lot of nostalgia. It was the summertime. I stayed with my cousin for 2 months in Seoul, and then I went over to Wonmyeongdong for the first time in my life. But this was the big song at that time. So this is DJ Doc with Summer Story. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. This is more of a cute and brings us back to how simple and easy the old times were compared to the music now. All right. another really, really fun song from Korea. It's called Summer Story. This is the Sky mix. And that is DJ Doc way back in in like the late 90s and early 2000s. So I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that song. You know, like even when you listen to older Korean music, you're going to see that most of the singers then weren't very good. They weren't like really great singers, but they had the very, very good image. It was very cute, and a lot of people like to listen to these types of things. But hope you guys enjoyed that Korean Tuesday with DJ Doc. All right, so let's get into today's new segment, and it's question and comment. And this is a place where I can kind of give you guys a really, really, kind of like the one we did just 2 weeks ago when it came to the song of choice. Should we play them or should we not? Right? So, Let's think about this very, very carefully. The question I'm going to bring to you today is about transparency. All right, and this is there's no right answer right now because there's people on both sides. But one of the big things that people are not big things, guys. Sorry, I'm not going to say big things. But one of the things people do talk to me about is some people are saying that there's not enough information on what's happening with Sunsteam in Korea. And it's hard to pray because we don't really know exactly what's going on. Like, we don't know how good it is and we don't know how bad it is, right? And of course, there's two sides to the coin. Like, if they give us I understand that if there's a lawsuit going on right now, if you say too much, that's going to hurt the case. And I understand that, right? Obviously, we understand this. But there's got to, if there's, some people are saying that if there's at least some general information, just knowing how things are going, like, wouldn't it be so much easier for us to pray? And on top of it, they said that what if it's so bad? Like, what if it, we're not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that what if it's so bad? Then don't you think there should be more urgency to pray? Instead of just telling us oh, guys, please pray. And it's been months and months. We haven't got any updates since the last time, right? So there's one of the big things come up is yeah, if we knew more and if we knew how bad it was, then we would pray better, right? Or we'd be more involved. We could pray in more detail. Then, of course, we have the flip side. The flip side is very interesting too, because on the flip side, what is there? The flip side is, but a lot of times leaders are also trying to protect those that are new. Right? So you have a lot of, new members and such, and they possibly, they could get tested by it, or they could, leave Providence, or, we want to protect those younglings also from hearing all those different types of news. Right? So we do have these interesting things to think about and to talk about, and we really have to get ourselves into that mode of, what is the better thing for us to do? What is the thing better for Providence as a whole, right? So we also have to look at the world. How does the world handle these cases, right? In the world, are they hiding it, or are they transparent about it and then they're dealing with it, or are they dealing it first? I want the comments to come out is what do you think is the best thing to do? Now, don't just say this is the best, I want it to be transparent. But you also kind of have to think about how do you tackle the other side, because there are going to be people that are tested. And of course, we can't just say things like, well, if they get tested by this, then they don't have perfect faith anyways, right? No, a lot of people are in process, right? They're growing in their faith too. So how do you tackle both sides? If we are not transparent, then what can we announce, right? Should it just be silent where no one knows what the heck is going on? Or should we be transparent? Or should we be half transparent? And this is the question I bring up to you, and I would love you guys to bring tons of comments, what your real feelings are about this topic. There is no right answer. I'm going to be honest with you guys. We can't say this is the best way. Right? We can't say that, right? But I would love to hear what you think, and I would love to, for me, take in all your comments, and next Tuesday, we bring all those comments together and talk about it, about, some of these good ideas and good points that can come out. All right? So that is the question and comment for this week, and we're going to get to, not an answer, but we'll discuss it in next Tuesday's question and comment segment. And I hope it's something that a lot of you guys out there, whether you're a leader or not, tell me what you guys think from your perspective. As a member, I would love to hear this. As a member, I would love to hear this. As a leader, I find it very difficult to say these things because I might not have full information. I couldn't answer their questions. There's tons of things that can come up here too. And we just got to be understanding on both sides. right? And I hope that we'll see both sides and be able to kind of like that Patreon member from Japan. I don't want to say his name because, you know, we don't have to say names, but he says we have to be on the mountain ridge, like Sunseem says, and see both sides, and we can make better decisions and not just be like, that's not fair, or this, and, you know, speak out emotionally more than anything else, okay? So that is a question and comment for this week. Please comment below. Would love to hear what you think about this transparency, especially when it comes to the situation with Sunseem that we're praying for right now, all right? So that is the last segment for today. Hope you guys really, really enjoyed this time. Please, everyone, enjoy your Tuesday. Do well, pray well, give thanksgiving, love, and glory to the Holy Trinity. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm